RPGs. You ended up with some very early, very wizardry-like RPGs in Japan around like 1984, 85. Things that were a little further afield, like Falcom's games, like Sorcerian and Dragon Slayer. And then along came Dragon Quest, and that really sort of set the tone and the standard for Japanese RPGs.
Mhm.
And I don't know, like what connections do you see with D&D and Dragon Quest?
I mean, just from, both monster types and creature types to the idea of, especially with the first Dragon Quest, it was really kind of crude and archaic graphics for the time. And outside
it
of
depends. Yeah, outside of combat.
yeah, outside of combat, absolutely. Outside of, especially enemy sprites. So a lot of the adventure, and there was a story, which personally for me, it was the first game I ever played with a legitimate story.
Mhm.
But a lot of it was, you got enjoyment out of it based on what you put into it. And a lot of the story and a lot of the adventures you would go on would be from your own imagination.
So at what point did you discover Dragon Warrior, I assume?
Yeah, Dragon Warrior. I remember the year we got our NES. It was late '89, and Nintendo Power was running a promotion that if you subscribed to the magazine for a year, that you got a free copy of Dragon Warrior.
So you were like 3?
I was 3, yes. My brother was a little bit older than me, so I feel like he was able to enjoy it at the time more than I was. But yeah, I mean, the thought of, a free game in the mail sounded great, and it came, and I think, aside from that, I don't, we had Mario. I think that might have been the only thing we had, Mario and Duck Hunt. But this game, playing it as a 3 or 4-year-old kind of just blew my mind in terms of scope and in terms of I don't know what to do. I cannot get out of this opening room.
Yeah, well, I can see where if you didn't read yet, that might have been a problem. So that's kind of a tall order for a 3-year-old.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was quite a bit older than you at that point, but Dragon Warrior definitely it wasn't the first story-based game I'd played because Ninja Gaiden had come out earlier that year, and that was, very heavily cinematic, very influenced by manga and anime, and had lengthy cutscenes between every level. But what I liked about Dragon Warrior is that it starts you out on a quest. You're talking to the king, and he says, "I need you to save my daughter. The evil wizard has captured her," and that's pretty much bog standard for RPGs. And you go out and you start exploring, and the game is really just kind of an open world, and there are basically no barriers in the world aside from meat gates, where you have enemies that are just way too difficult for you to take on until you level up and gain better equipment and stuff. So you just kind of explore, learn that you shouldn't cross bridges until you're stronger, and after about a quarter of the game, there's the princess, and you save her, and you're like, oh, well, that was the story. And then it turns out that's just kind of like the prologue, and there's a much bigger story beyond that. And the quest continues and expands all around the country. And, Final Fantasy did that. It borrowed that exact same structure like a year later. You start out, the king is like, oh, my daughter's been kidnapped by Garland, go save her. So you walk directly north of the castle and save her. And like 5 minutes later, you've kind of, moved beyond that point. But when Dragon Quest did it, it was new. It was different. It was like, you're not just saving the princess, you're going above and beyond. And the princess is very helpful because she tells you where to find the very important things that you need to be able to defeat the Dragon Lord.
The Ball of Light.
The Ball of Light and was it the Ball of Light? The staff? I don't know. You create a rainbow. That's the important thing. The rainbow bridge to Charlock Castle. And then you defeat the Dragon Lord. Yep. Anyway, so there wasn't too much to it, but it was a cute little game. And then that kind of expanded further and in sequels, and it's interesting because the games have expanded beyond that quite a bit, but at the same time, like every Dragon Quest is still very clearly derived from that Dragon Quest, the very first one. There's no doubt that they're all part of the same series.
Absolutely. I mean, unlike Final Fantasy, which is really just spun out in countless directions. Dragon Warrior, and then Dragon Quest has definitely maintained its roots.
Mm-hmm. So you got to respect it for that.
Absolutely.
There aren't a lot of series that maintain that kind of fidelity, and people complain that the series has that sort of consistency, that constancy, and they see that as stagnation. But I think that that's actually a really big part of its popularity, at least in Japan, where it's a really big deal. People like knowing that they can always go back to Dragon Quest, and it will always be the game that they remember, and
Absolutely.
it will always be that thing that they have fond memories of, and they can pass it on to their kids. And their kids are like, "No, Dad, I want to play Monster Hunter," but at least they can try. That's the important thing.
Have there been installments in the series that have really kind of been the black sheep of the family? Are there any of
To
those
my
that have just
knowledge, all of them have been really successful in Japan. There was a lot of controversy around 9. Like there was a kind of an Amazon bombing effort after 9 came out because some people didn't like how far it strayed from the Dragon Quest style. But even so, I mean, I think it's the best selling Dragon Quest to date, and it's also done really well outside of Japan. It sold more than 1 million copies in Europe and America. Um, I don't think that there are any Dragon Quest games that Japan's just like, screw you.
Yeah.
Dragon Quest 7, Dragon Warrior 7 didn't really do so well over here, and people tend to look favorably at it outside of Japan, but it was really successful and popular there. So who knows?
Mhm.
It's different tastes very much at work, and the different perceptions of the Dragon Quest series.
Yeah. I know the creators have also credited the long-term success of the series to the fact that when someone picks up a Dragon Quest game, they know what they're in for.
Right.
That it's almost like their version of the Nintendo seal of quality, that you're getting something with who these artists have had their hands in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of what Nintendo goes for with the Zelda games, but I don't know if Zelda has quite the same amount of lore. Like, it's interesting because if you look at Ocarina of Time versus Twilight Princess, they're pretty much the same game. If you look at Dragon Quest 6 versus Dragon Quest 9, they're pretty much the same game, but I feel like a lot of Dragon Quest commonalities have to do with like weapons and like monsters and skills and things like that are part of a bigger sandbox. Whereas Zelda, it tends to be like you're picking up the same boomerang, you're picking up the same arrows and so forth. So it does tend to feel a little, I don't know. I don't know that Zelda necessarily pulls off the constancy thing quite in the same way as Dragon Quest, but to each their own. I guess we can find out what our listeners think by opening up the phone lines now, because it's after 4:00. So we should brace ourselves for impact. All right. Oh, the phone lines are open, and already we've got a phone call. Maybe. Maybe. Oh, we do. Hi, thanks for calling Retronauts.
Hey,
What's up?
Retronauts Live?
This is Retronauts Live. Yes.
Excellent. I made it through. Are you the only one on, Jeremy?
I'm not. I'm here with Marty Sleva, our new Sheets intern.
Hello.
Excellent. Good. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not watching the live stream, so I don't know what all of you've talked about in the first few minutes. Have you talked much about the music?
No, we haven't really talked about anything, but you haven't introduced yourself.
Oh, I'm Superboy Allen from Tennessee.
Okay. Hi, Superboy Allen. We have not talked about the music. Is there something specific about the music that touches your soul and stirs your feelings?
Yes, as a matter of fact. The very first game, throughout the series, there's a lot of good music, and yeah, some of it's kind of samey because Sugiyama keeps stealing from himself. But I'll just mention a few pieces.